And we have to start with roll call. So Craig.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Lebarski. Chair Cruz. We know he is not going to be here tonight. Vice Chair Lebarski.
Here.
Commissioner Garcia.
He's not here, but he plans to attend and will be late.
Commissioner Johnson. We know she is not here tonight as well. Commissioner McGrath.
Here.
Commissioner Barrow.
Here.
And Commissioner Zecker.
Here.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
I'd like to thank Tina for making sure that I'm not the last on the list for once.
If I was on the list, I'd be after you. So.
Okay. Upcoming events. Jan, are you going to tell us about those, or?
Right, so obviously, please look at, Flagstaff 365 as always. But as was sent out to you, I'd like to remind you that you are invited to a reception this Thursday to join 33 art and science culture nonprofit recipients of the fiscal year 23 General Operating Support Grant Program. And Creative Flagstaff is hosting a little reception at the Coconino Center for the Arts beginning at 5 o'clock. So there'll be kind of, cake, and there'll be, I guess maybe some beverages of choice. And then there'll be a little ceremony and presentation at 5:30. $317,000 of grant money was awarded in BB funded grants ranging from $1,000 to $25,000 to these organizations. So it really is a great opportunity to meet those that we generously support in City with the BBB for a vibrant creative community.
Great. Well, I hope someone from the commission can go. I can't make it, but I encourage others. Do we have any public participation?
No, I received nothing from public for participation.
Then we will go on to approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the July minutes?
Motion to approve the July minutes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Hey, Anthony. Are there any comments, any suggestions, edits? Ready to vote on the July minutes? All those in favor of approving them, please say aye.
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 Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay,
I'll
approved.
abstain.
The
I wasn't
minutes
here.
are approved.
All right, and we'll note that Commissioner Garcia has now joined us.
Yeah.
For the roll call. Yeah, we missed roll call, but we did. Okay, next.
Well, the first announcement is when I'm happy to make, and I know David is happy to make, so please go ahead.
Well, it's pretty exciting that Jana, after a search that we advertised nationally and appreciated Vice Chair sitting with us for the discussion. Jana was our premier candidate, and therefore today is her first day, I guess technically is the first day of the pay period, but her first working day as your Beautification Arts and Sciences Program Manager, and we are very excited.
Everybody, I am excited. I just, want to use all my experience and ideas to support this community in what it wants for its public art and beautification. Help them enact it, help them get the high quality that they deserve. So that's my just premier goal. And I feel lucky because this community is so wonderful to work in, and everybody that I've met in the last 2.5 years, it just always reaffirms that I came to the right place. So
Well, I think I speak for all of us that we're really lucky that you agreed to take on this role, which is a very demanding one. And that we, so fortunate to have the depth of experience that you've got and this wonderful demeanor that you bring to the conversations too. So congratulations and thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So,
Do you want to tell us about the Grand Canyon Youth?
yes, I do. This is so fun. I'm going to go ahead and bring up a presentation for this. And let's see.
Greg, can you confirm that the folks online can see the presentation?
I can see it.
We can see it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. So project completion. We got a notice this summer about a project that you guys awarded money to back in May of 2019 for the Grand Canyon Youth. And their project got completed just about 2 weeks ago. And so they are a 501c, and they've been part of the Flagstaff community since 1998. They serve over 10,000 youth, and they offer these educational, outdoor exhibitions that connect young people to the transformative power of the rivers and the canyons of the Southwest. And they really do support a diverse and equitable world, and where all youth are empowered. With this kind of discovery and care of yourself and community in the natural world. So they applied for this grant, and they had gotten a new building at 2131 North 1st Street in Sunnyside. And the building had a nice interior, but it didn't really have a good exterior to match. And so they had a proposal. They asked for a grant from us, and as well as sustainability, because they had some sustainability elements in what they wanted to do in the kind of gardening. So they wanted to create this beautiful educational landscape in the Sunnyside neighborhood. But as they kind of got into it in the next season, COVID interrupted their plans pretty dramatically. And so they, in the interim, they asked for an extension. It was granted during COVID. They asked each year, so they did come back to us. They were very communicative. And so we, and the money had been actually, paid out, because grant fundies kind of get, at that time, now they get half up front, half at the end. But at that time, they got it all up front. But they came back, but they lost a lot of their original partners. And so they had to go out for new collaborators. They're like Terra Birds was going to be, heavily involved. Terra Birds was still involved, but they weren't exactly running the project anymore. But they had Carol Fritzinger. She really spearheaded the project. Started in January, and got it finished this year. So I'm going to do a little before, after, and during. This program, there was 7 volunteer landscaping days. So they had 7 full days of work. When they went back out in January of 2022, part of the front entry had been washed away by the, floods from the museum, after the museum fire in 2021. It was very heavily littered, I guess, with a lot of dog things and other kinds of litter. So they had just some days of cleanup. So one of the things that they also did is they put in low stone and block perimeter, so to help with future flooding. They kind of put flagstone down in some places to create more meeting space in shaded areas. They did roof runoff to passively capture water for the plants. They did a pollinator garden, a veggie garden, and recycled coolers. You'll see some more of those pictures later. But then they had they had periods of it was going, and then there was periods between gathering volunteers where things kind of sat. And during one of those periods where things kind of sat, 2 pieces of Yavapai sandstone for benches walked off one night. But Claire wrote this sign, and they walked back the very next morning. After she posted the sign. So that it became benches. So, very excited. So here's again just some more of the, so there's the flagstone in the seating area that I told you about, that so that they have more meeting space that they added, and then. So this is more of the improvements that they did, and you can see they used a lot of, recycled, materials. And some more for after and during. Here's a keyhole garden that they made using compost from some of their trips. Here's a raised veggie garden made from recyclable coolers. So can we have a big hand for Grand Canyon?
Yeah.
Okay, so that ends that presentation. So always I think the beautification and action grants is one of our strongest programs where the community gets to decide their own ideas. Actually, we help them present, we give them, some emotional support and ideas, but they really come up with the ideas and they, do it themselves. And it's very bottom up.
It's bottom up and it's really cost effective, I think.
Yes, I know.
So,
They get what they did
yeah.
with $4,000 in volunteers. Yes, very much so.
Well, thanks for that. Are there any announcements from commissioners? Okay, we're ready to move on to action items. And the first one is Jonathan Stone has returned. Thank you, Jonathan. And this is a continuation from our last meeting where we had voted to approve the recommendation for $50,000 to support a demonstration event with the art festival. And we ended that discussion with that we were going to get a statement about deliverables, which staff.
And before we have Jonathan do that, you should know that I'm a volunteer for Creative Flagstaff. And as such, I serve as the chair of this Arts Festival committee. So I'm going to recuse myself. I'm actually going to step outside. So if someone would go get me when you're done, that would be great.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Barrel.
Go get him, Jonathan.
Right. So yeah, I'll give a brief introduction. Yes, this item is a carryover from July and BPAC meeting where our director of Creative Flagstaff made his funding requests. And in response, BPAC had some concerns and direction to give staff so that Dave McIntyre, the Community Investment Director, myself, and Mr. Stone met and negotiated a set of deliverables as that we understood that the commission wanted. And I would like to step back and make a preface remark. Staff doesn't have a concern per se that BBB funds are going towards operating costs. Indeed, these grants, if you go to the reception on Thursday night, that we give $317,000 worth, do support operating costs for our organization. I will also say that launching a festival, just like opening a restaurant, has inherent risks in its success. But BPAC has agreed to support already in some way $50,000. So I ask you just to consider, will this support the way this is outlined? Make it more or less likely for obviously the festival to succeed? And is it the best way to help the festival succeed? Would us contributing a project more likely to help it succeed, or would this initial seed money make it more likely to succeed? And I think those are the sorts of questions that you might want to ask yourself. But without further ado, these are what we came up with. And Jonathan, did you want to speak to these first, or did you want me to? We all three of us contributed to them, so.
Yeah, I'm not certain how much I can add, but I will say I would have been in person had I known you were meeting in person. So I apologize that I'm on the screen here. I even drove past City Hall. I said I was going to take this meeting from home because.
Oh, yeah, we voted, I think last time to go hybrid, but that was probably after you finished yours. So it was an action item. So this is our very first hybrid meeting.
Well, welcome back in person, and I look forward to being in person with you all the next time I have an opportunity to present or be part of the conversation.
Okay, so I guess I'll go ahead and you can add, what you want, but we basically, understood the commission to be asking us for a set of deliverables. And whether this is actually in a formal contract or a memorandum of understanding is something that we will be, as staff, working out with, procurement. But we kind of came up with the overall, kind of arching, that this money is for Creative Flagstaff to coordinate and deliver a pilot festival of an arts-centric, that's a hard one to say, programming with this purpose of, creating for creative placemaking, activating areas of Flagstaff, and with the funding that has already, been, as I say, allocated by BPAC. But these are the following specifics that we are agreeing to, that BPAC or city staff, as they designated, will have input on the locations to be activated that align with the city's goals, that the pilot festival will occur over a minimum of 2 days, that that Creative Flagstaff will support a minimum of 8 grantees, with the goal of supporting more, but a minimum of 8. And these grantees will get this specific support. They will get project delivery coordination, venue coordination, marketing, day of services. And we acknowledge that some of these grantees may already have gotten an operating grant from BBB, but this, we want to make sure that you know that this is above and beyond what the support that they get for those regular grants. So we wanted to make that clear because we thought that might be a question that come up. And then, also for the startup, there'll be support for the website, social media production, and partner communications. So as well as the creation of funding and operational framework to support that. Remember, this is a pilot, but this is to help launch, hopefully every year continuing, festival for Flagstaff. So, Jonathan, did you want to add anything?
I think that pretty well sums it up, but we are, of course, incredibly supportive of BPAC. I guess blessing the use of funds in this way through our contract with the city to basically create what is what we see as a major catalyst for our cultural and creative sector development. And so this is not a regular project, let's say. It's got a lot of community input and is really designed to be accessible for the entire community, whether they're presenting or participating as a patron. And that if we do this right, it's not going to be easy, but if we do this right, it will become a fixture in our community and really be the only kind of event that we can imagine where we would have the possibility for our entire cultural sector to have participation in some way. So it's a really special project, and I really thank the volunteers and other people that have put in the time they have to come up with the concept that has been derived. City support for this project, I think, is critical to demonstrate to other funders that this truly is a citywide event. And so these funds are an important indicator, and we're already in talks with the Arizona Commission on the Arts, who is potentially interested in supporting this project in a bigger way. And these funds and potentially their support, along with some of the other support that we've lined up, should pretty well secure the pilot event and set us up for success as we move forward with the 2024 main event.
Well, thank you, and thank you to staff and Jonathan for creating this deliverables document for us. And now I'm just wondering, commissioners, do you have comments, concerns, suggestions, issues?
Well, Sandra, since you were here last meeting and I wasn't, could you kind of sum up what the concerns were then and why we're having a second meeting now?
Sure. I mean, my memory of it is, and I think actually Craig did a great job summarizing that conversation,
Yeah.
but it was that it was vague as to what the funding would be used for. And so this has really clarified that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that was the gist of our concern.
I think so. Cool. Yeah. Sounds good. I just want to say that I support the idea and the work of that has went into this idea up until now. Fully, I was very apprehensive in the beginning only because of the complexity of a project like this and bringing anything new to a place like this. But on behalf of the city, I was able to team up with John and see what other communities were doing around these type of ideas. And even though 50,000 is a big number for the city, in the scope of things and in the amount of revenue that could be returned to the city, if it's a success, it'll pay for itself. And that in itself is like getting a freebie, a free festival out of it. If it's successful, if it's not, then 50,000 is kind of a small price to pay for. I just don't think it's not going to be successful. I think we will have outcomes that are fruitful for years to come. And even if it's not necessarily this festival, we're going to learn so much from the process that we are going to have a successful festival in the future, the very near future. That's just my ideas for now, and I'll just let it go around the table.
Great, thank you. Commissioner McGrath.
Thank you very much for putting pen to paper here. It helps me a lot. A question about just some clarity around number 3.
We've been through several revisions, so that's
Okay,
why.
because I read it a bunch of times and I'm still kind of trying to understand it. So we'll support a minimum of 8 art sciences or creative idea festival grantees. And what is a festival grantee?
Would you like me to answer that?
Please do.
Okay. One of the ways that we're imagining supporting artists and other participation in the festival is through a competitive grant process. Now, Creative Flagstaff is no stranger to competitive grants, but typically we issue those grants and support them in the compliance of their grant contract. This instead, if we issue them grants from whatever the source of revenues are, we're basically saying in this line item that there will be 8, but hopefully and probably 20 presentations of some kind that are being coordinated and supported centrally, as you might imagine a festival entity would do. When we give money, say to, let's say, I'll use Theatricos as an example. We give them the money, but then they're responsible for everything, but it's an acknowledgement that the festival itself is a service and a venue to support the creative work that is presented as a result of any funds that might be granted. We're a little vague on the quantity because the grant making committee is still kind of trying to think through the guidelines that would be going out there, but we do recognize that a good pilot festival probably needs to have, you know, in the 10 to 20 range of things to do, maybe even more, but we just, you know, are kind of trying to feel our way into the pilot festival to see how many activities may actually end up being presented. Does that answer your question?
Because I was going to say, at a more basic level, a grantee is somebody who's going to be performing or presenting some art. You know, it could be a performance piece, it could, you know, be a projection piece, it could be a lot of many different things we don't know yet. So they would receive money, to put that on at the festival.
Coordinating them with the venue and making sure that, you know, those things are tight, I think that has a lot to do with it. Also explaining to the community how we're going to take you to a you know, not the community, but the artists, how they're going to be able to participate in this. I mean, these are big jobs in the beginning of a festival phases. And to garner that support through this funding, I think is pretty cool.
So is that cash that would be going to the grantees?
Yes, Creative Flagstaff will be having, as they say, a competitive process, a competitive selection process, and those grantees will get some money to put on an art piece or a performance.
So there will be cash awards, and then in addition to that, the money will also be supporting project delivery coordination, venue coordination, marketing, and day of services.
Yes.
And I think there could be a stronger emphasis on what John said about, or Jonathan said about having the city's buy-in, because I think this $50,000 number is.
It's not going to be enough to
Agreed.
to do it.
Yeah.
It's a small percentage of what's going to need to be happening with other private funding. And having the city's buy-in, I think, is going to at least give some validation to the festival.
Any other concerns or questions?
Well, that, and then also support festival website creation, social media production, and partner communications. It seems like we're putting a very heavy ask on $50,000, and I get that, I appreciate it, but it's just, there's just a lot in there.
I mean, let's, you know, to be honest, they need to find other money in order to do this, but this was, you know, kind of what they need to deliver for our funding. Ultimately, they have to, they're in charge of getting that other funding elsewhere.
Okay, thank you for helping me get it.
And this still needs to go to council for approval, right?
No.
Oh, okay, even though it's a $50,000 outlay?
It turns out that the contract that we have currently has enough room in it that we could just add it on.
Yes.
It's very odd because you are correct that almost always the $50,000 outlay would go to council, but the way this particular contract is written, that's not the case.
Yes, and that was something that we checked into. Yeah, otherwise it would have been $48,000, we'll just say. Because, and I don't mean that, we're not trying to staff bypass council. It's just that with Creative Flagstaff going out to these other entities, having, you know, if you guys support it, having this in place is a matter of some timeliness. And, you know, the mayor's office is writing a letter of support for the festival, so they are aware of it, they know about it. This isn't, you know, anything that's under the radar with city council. I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, we never want to see me going around, but.
Well, and I think it is important to have council be behind this.
Yes, and so the mayor's office is actually writing a letter of support for the other grants that Creative Flagstaff is applying for.
If you'd like us to go to council at some point to talk to them about it, we could certainly do that.
Yes.
Well, I'm just wondering if there's any concerns that BPAC has awarded this kind of money without sufficient consultation and approval, that's all. So
I don't believe there'd be any, I'm sorry.
Well, no, you're actually in a better
I
position
don't
to
believe
answer.
there'd be any concerns about that in particular. We actually went through the budget process. This is a budget line item. That's why it can fit into there because it's already a part of a previous purchase order. Like it's in place with all the administrative protocols.
It's over
met.
$300,000. It's
It was
already
more about
huge.
the guidance to it that
Yes.
mattered in this situation. So yeah, we've gone through our protocols previously. We're seeking your guidance in how that happens. But if we were gonna go back to council, it would less be for approval and more be just informational and to make sure they were aware
Yeah,
and
because they like
take
to hear.
any guidance from it. I
They
mean, it's
like to
just,
hear from us.
right, exactly. And
Right.
speaking of that, hello, Vice Mayor. So,
Oh, great, yes, I was just gonna say, well, we have our liaison here, so.
Jonathan, you there?
I'm sorry?
Have you presented this idea to council before? I mean, the festival idea.
Council, I'm fairly certain in my, ever since the festival has been a topic of consideration, it's been presented to council in some form in our annual updates. I don't believe they've gotten a dedicated presentation about the festival, but absolutely happy to do that at some point, especially as we're looking to build steam into this pilot event. But I don't believe this particular festival is a surprise to council. And I see Council Member Sweet is in the meeting. Maybe she could be our temperature check to see if it's a surprise or not.
And
Hi, everybody.
Vice Mayor Sweet, so.
Hello, Vice Mayor.
Hello. Hey, I was on a flood call. I'm so sorry that I'm late. To answer that question, as far as I'm concerned, Councilmember House might be the only one that may not be up to date on this. Other than that, I feel like you have been very transparent and have informed us of this concept from the get-go. So I think for the most part, we're well aware. Thank you.
And thank you for the correction, Vice Mayor. I apologize. And I have had a one-on-one meeting with Council Member Sweet where we've talked about a lot of the initiatives that Creative Flagstaff is working on. So she's been able to provide input on sort of all of our work, including the festival.
Did you mean house?
Oh, did you mean House or Sweet?
I'm sorry, I meant House. Yes.
We thought so.
Just wanted to clarify.
We've talked as well, but yeah, I think he was meaning Councilmember House.
Great, well, it sounds like we are ready to.
I have a question, not necessarily a concern about what we're talking, the four that are up here, but assuming this is successful, what's the long-term, like, do you have a long-term plan for financing this? Are we looking to finance this for $50,000 in future years as well? Do you have an idea on that?
We're still working on sort of the long-term financing plan of the festival. The first full year of the festival is going to probably look a little different than what a long-term plan might be. A lot of the work going into a pilot festival is going to be kind of testing the waters on kind of what we can expect from corporate support. There is a lot of interest, I think, in this concept that's fundable through foundations. And so we're just, it's kind of open air and ended. You know, of course, we'd welcome BPAC's continued support for the festival, but that is not necessarily something that we think is that this would necessarily be causing us to come back and ask again. So I think, you know, after the pilot festival, we might be like, what'd you guys think? Right. And I was telling, I forget who I was speaking with. I was basically saying, you know, we really want to see the city involved in this project. And we measure sort of the festival, not just on what passes through the balance sheet and through the festival's profit and loss, but like, you know, what sort of activity is generated outside of that, but as part of the festival. And so, you know, we'll be looking at sort of total festival activity. And if the festival has inspired you all or the city to participate in other ways, that's a positive, right? And I believe I was speaking with David about that, and as well as Jana, that we want to see participation at the end of the day.
So kind of along those lines, and I apologize if this was discussed at the last meeting, will there be any room for BPAC to have a presence at the festival that we also can have interaction with the community as this is going on?
I sure hope so.
Yeah, I'm gonna answer that because I think, as I did mention at the last meeting, that if we had more staff, we would actually probably be funding and doing a competitive bit of seeking a public art performance piece for the festival. And I'm hoping that that's the direction that we get to take in the next festivals. Because I think it would be really fun to do a public art performance piece for this festival, and I think
You don't mean us, do you?
you, us.
I didn't sign up for that.
But you can be the selection panel, right? And so very much, I'm kind of, it's hard to not be able to do that this year. But I'm hoping in the future years that is something that we're doing. I will also say though that no festival runs without city support of the city that it's in. No festival runs, and whether it's in kind through marketing or, there's going to be some support, whether it's through us or the city in general, that will probably be a regular part of the festival. Just whether it's going to be this kind of upfront kind of seed money, no, but there will be support in some way. So there may be an ask in the future, and we just can't know what that is yet. And it may not be of our department, it may be of another department.
And just to riff off that a little bit, this is kind of anecdotal and just to add context to the experience that I had when I was with John, looking at a template of another festival, which has probably some similarities, but it was their festival and we were just there to kind of get how things worked. Well, during that festival, in the beginning phases, the city was more a part of it, like a bigger presence. There was probably more funding and things. And as the festival got bigger, the city backed off more and more for a whole bunch of reasons, but it could add some context to what you're asking.
But I heard your question slightly differently than that, so I want to just check in.
Okay.
Were you talking about actually in terms of interacting with the pieces, having some recognition for the VPAC's contribution?
I guess, well, and I think maybe I was more going that. I'm just thinking about how this could be a good opportunity for us as a commission to build some awareness of what we do as a commission with the community, because I don't think, I would venture to say that there are many people in Flagstaff who don't even know that we exist, that we meet on a regular basis. And if we're contributing money to this, then we should be out there saying like, yeah, we're part of this and we're part of your community and we're the community voice that helps put on these, creative, like we're working with Creative Flagstaff to do these types of things and make them aware that we exist and that we're doing these types of projects. It could be a great way to market our beautification and action grants and other projects that we have.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking of, just having that connection. Yeah.
Do we have a booth?
You guys can have whatever you want. And
You will be manning
we are,
it
of
full
course,
time.
absolutely supportive of getting the word out about the work that's being done in our community, especially around creative placemaking and public art. So it is a creative placemaking focused festival, and I think that there's a ton of room and hopefully a lot of creative opportunities for ways that you guys can express and share your involvement with the festival.
If I could add just briefly as well, there's also a part of Jonathan's contract, which this is now being attached to, requires that the BBB funds and BPAC are acknowledged. So it's a question of how that works. It's more the question on the table. And this is not, nobody's seen this in the public yet. It's hidden, but we're working on a BBB rebranding in general that would hopefully be able to be something that we can bring to the commission to take a look at. But we are aware that maybe not everybody in the community fully understands how BBB funds go to any of the programs. I mean, they support Parks and Rec, they support beautification, arts and sciences, economic development, and the CVB tourism. And helping make sure that the community better understands that is a long-term goal of mine specifically, and luckily a lot of other people in the city, and B, going to be extra important as we approach the renewal, which is in the not too distant future in terms of how things go with cities. So, so yes, the engagement of making sure that the BPAC and the BBB in general both get a lot of acknowledgement and opportunities to be tied to this wonderful thing will be something we're definitely looking at Jonathan for. Thank you.
Just quickly, when is that renewal?
So technically, I believe it expires in 2027, because of the way elections run. We don't have a firm date yet, but we could be asking the public to consider it. We haven't talked to council about this or anything, but probably in 24 or 26, because you want to be out in front of those things. Certainly don't want it to expire. So those are conversations that are ongoing, and like I said, 2024 is not that far away.
No, and I think it's really important that the public understand
Yes.
how important these funds are, and I mean, how importantly, what good things they're being put to use for.
I mean, the impact of BBB is huge, but not everybody understands how it ties together. And yeah, and the impact of the beautification and public art component of the BBB is huge. So helping make sure that that branding is in place, helping make sure that people understand how that works, helping make sure that when a festival is supported, that credit it ties on it too is all part of it. And I know Jonathan understands that completely as well.
And it's not that I'm looking for credit necessarily, I think
Oh,
it's
that's just me.
okay. I just want to make sure I'm not looking for like
It's not me.
glory or anything. I just thought this could be a good opportunity to promote what we do. And
Yeah. I mean, I've always been a firm advocate of that as well at every opportunity. And to see people coming onto the commission that is still holding that torch while, mine has definitely burnt out. I do appreciate it. I do appreciate that.
Well, I mean, it's in everybody's benefit. Sorry, I mean, I'm not a commissioner, but it's Jonathan's benefit. It's the whole community's benefit for people to understand that. So I thought it was with me.
All right, thank you. Any other conversation that needs to happen here before we ask for a motion?
Yeah, and as I put in the slide, I did want to say that I would like the motion to, something of the language that I put forward, that you're approving the fund for this purpose with this memorandum of understanding. If you refer to this, then this can become kind of part of the record officially.
Would someone like to make that motion?
I don't have it written in front of me, so you can say it.
You don't have to read the whole.
No, you don't have to read
You
the
don't have to
whole
read the whole
thing. That's what I was
text. You
saying.
just
You read
refer to
the
the
first two
refer to
lines with the memorandum of understanding that's on the slide.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding that's on the slide.
And allocate the use of these funds for these purposes.
And to allocate the use of these funds for these purposes, which are listed on the slide.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any opposed? We're okay.
Thank you.
We're unanimous on this, Jonathan.
It's
Thank you so
unanimous.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for the conversation.
And good luck.
Go back.
We're going to need it, but you guys are really helping us out. So we'll need less luck now. So I appreciate it.
Great. Okay, we're on to discussion items. And that's you, Gianna, on the foots trails.
All right. So, first of all, I asked the last meeting, and I know Great. So, I asked you at the last meeting, and I kind of, when I was going over the work plan, I kind of indicated that if there were any new project ideas, that they need to be presented at this meeting and the September meeting. And that is largely because, October is already our retreat. So if any research needs to go into, ideas or anything like that, that's, so I'm since I didn't hear from anybody, I'm gonna go ahead and put up a test balloon for an idea. And it came out of, some of you may recall, and I don't know why this isn't working. Why isn't it? Oh, it is, okay. Yeah, on my screen, it's not showing the same. Isn't that strange? Okay.
Yeah, that is.
All right. So, you may recall that we did a donation policy last year because we talked about a donation policy because I said there was a donation for a sculpture that was going to be potentially coming before you. That has not yet come before you for many reasons, but while we were doing that, we were researching possible site places for this possible donation of a sculpture. And so we went to parks for that, and I so loved the spots the parks picked out. And I said, well, even if that donation never occurs, what about using the foots trails in general, since these have been identified as possibly supporting sculpture? Why don't we think about doing our own sculpture project along foots trails? And I had that idea, and then when we did the yellow box exercise, which I have two commissioners here who participated in, the foots trails came out of that yellow box place, like, as so important to Flagstaff, so that kind of reinforced it for me. So these are the 4 locations that could possibly support, 18 inches by 18 inches by 36 inch footer, and that's a basic footer. We're not talking about gigantic, monumental, art here. We're talking about something more subtle that would fit in with nature, and then have, and have that kind of intersectionality. So these are the 4 locations, and so at Forest and Turquoise, you can see that there's a foots connection, and there's the bus stop. There's lots of foot traffic, for those who work at the medical center and at the physician's office at that corner. So a lot of people, they go out for lunch and they hit that foots trail for a nice walk. And so, and it has a bus stop. And so, it could just be a really, really great location if we wanted to make a permanent sculpture there. The backside of Fox Glen Park. And so I know these aren't too big, but you can kind of, so the yellow's, highlighted square is where Parks has identified for us. And I have to, first of all, give a huge thank you to Amy Hagan, Parks and Recreation Manager, who, actually came up with these sites and did these maps and, for us to consider. So yeah, you come off the park and then you enter a foots trail, and there is already kind of a gateway, signage piece there. So there could really, it would be really a nice place for a companion sculpture or 3D art of some sort. This is the only one that I have to, not back off of, but it's the Lone Tree right near the Sinclair Wash sitting area. And there is a sitting area. What I don't know is that there's improvements going in as part of the Lone Tree overpass. And I know they come down Lone Tree, but I'm not exactly sure where they end. So I don't know if this will be reconfigured. So I would check in with Christine Cameron and find out. But it's still, it is again a nice juncture because it's already got a seating area. And so it's a place where, again, the road intersects the trails. And then, up near the pond, Francis sorry, short pond, So, you know, there's the intersection of the Karen Cooper and Aztec Trail right there that Parks estimates gets at least 200 passerbys per month. And these are minimums. They're not, you know, this is a very popular, I was gonna
Per
say,
month?
yeah, per month, more than per month. I was like, 200 a week? Are you know, they
Good
wanted to
Saturday.
be conservative. I only wanted to be conservative. So, but it's a very heavily used trail. And so she thought actually that intersection of those two trails would also be an ideal spot for, you know, some kind of three-dimensional artwork. And obviously there would be lots of considerations that would have to go into this. You know, as far as, you know, because we would have to worry about maintenance and have to worry about vandalism, and because they wouldn't have, you know, other than eyes of other hikers, some of them, you know, wouldn't have a lot of eyes on them. But I thought I would just kind of do a test balloon to see if there's any interest. Because, you know, we would, if there is, we can start the conversation. We can go more into pros and cons of each location, maybe at our retreat. We can, you know, start shaping maybe what the project, you know, what kind of sculpture we might want to call for. And I'd have to meet with Parks and Property Development and meet with upper management and all the things that we do to go into starting a project. And, you know, and then at the retreat, you know, see, you know, where in the 5-year plan we might see it fitting. What priority you would give it over the other projects that we already have. But, you know, it's not anything that we would put on this year or next year. It would probably be 3 to 5 years out. But so that was just my idea, and I just kind of wanted to see what you thought about it.
And Jana, are you saying, asking that we approve the cluster of projects, or?
Yeah, or we could pick one spot and do one and see how it goes, and then do another. So it could be approved as 4 locations, or it could be approved as one of the 4.
Are you looking for approval now, or?
No,
it
I'm not.
needs to
Just,
be
I'm
part
just
of the
saying,
conversation to retreat?
this is just a discussion. No, we're under discussion items now. So we're just, this is a test balloon. Does this have, should I pursue this or not pursue this? And, you know, is it a big thumbs, I mean, is it enthusiasm, or is it maybe if it's the right thing, or is it just, oh, forget about it? That's not a good idea. We want nature to be just nature and no art out there.
I see other merit to just the presentation alone as a seed for the new commissioners and myself to understand how easy it is to come up with an idea for us to put on the 5-year plan that has some actual impact. And she illustrated that perfectly through the little sketch. Your sketch doesn't have to be that good. It could just be like, hey, I want to see this over there. Maybe we can figure that out and put that into the 5-year plan. So and as usual, I'm open to all ideas. And I think that this one in particular, we have, what's that sculpture, the little funky dude?
The rock
Yeah,
man.
yeah. We financed.
There is a sculpture out on the
Yes.
Urban Trail.
Yes, I've seen pictures of it. I've never seen it in person.
Yeah,
The
It's very-
Flagstonian.
Flagstonian.
Flagstone.
That's right.
And it's much loved at Christmas. People put a little elf hat on him.
Yeah,
Someone
yeah.
put a COVID mask on him, so.
That was something that we also participated in, so that was kind of like the pilot before the pilot. So we could see, you know, we can go back to that and see about maintenance and things and how that's still holding up, and if he still has all his, you know, appendages and things.
Okay, I'm gonna look into it.
Yeah.
That was actually part of how we started coming up with some of these locations too.
Yeah.
Because where is the Flagstaffian gonna go? And so it's determined, actually, I can't quite remember where he is right now, which is weird. But it's just this idea that,
Yeah, I like it, and I think that we, you know, and why I say so easily, yeah, let's go with that idea, is we shouldn't limit ourselves to ideas when we're coming up with ideas for the 5-year plan, you know. If you have none, but you have this one crazy one, at least you have one. So.
Commissioner Bill.
I like it. Sounds like a good idea. At least to pursue it and see where it lands.
I think it's a great idea. I like the either turquoise or Foxglove Park. I'm less excited about more stuff over in West Flagstaff and more kind of in the center part of the city, or what some people call East Flagstaff. So that's my particulars on the location. Not that, I mean, there's going to be way more than 200 people going by. You know, that the one by Francis Short Pond, that is woefully underestimated, which I thank her for that. But I think it's a great idea, and I agree with Commissioner Garcia. This is helpful to me to start thinking about how to come up with ideas like this to present them. So, excellent, thank you.
Great, I don't really have anything to add to that.
Sandra, I just have one last. And you know, this is something that you just might want to keep in the notebook, because I think you have a great template here, but I frequent the urban trail through Buffalo Park on the east side. So I wouldn't necessarily say on the east side, but closer to Buffalo Park area. There's just so many people coming and going there. There's plenty of visibility and walkability there as well. So Buffalo Park would be another great location to think about. And that's it, I think. I had one other thing to say, but I can't remember. Sandra?
Yeah, do you remember, Anthony, that the person who did the Flagstaff, the end, Flagstonian, wanted to do a whole series of those. And I'm wondering if he's still in town. And it was kind of, we thought, well, let's start with one and let's see how people respond. And we're not going to commit to a whole series. But in fact, the response, as far as I know, has been very positive. So it might be something, again, to see if he's still in town, and for us to consider whether we wanted to do a series of those little figures. So.
Oh, and see, I did not know that history, so thank you so much.
And I'm very much in favor of putting this on the docket, so.
Okay, well, I will pursue it.
Do we have another idea along those lines? Is there a place in the agenda to add that to the agenda? That question makes sense. For a future meeting, maybe.
For a future meeting, as you know, that there is a spot where you can ask for a future agenda item.
But are you saying that you have another idea that you'd like considered?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
right now, you are asking to see those ideas, hear those ideas.
Right. So I asked at
there
the,
be-
I'm sorry, and you weren't at the last commission meeting not by your own choice. And so I asked for new ideas for this meeting and for next meeting.
Okay.
So please you can just email me.
Okay.
And I will put it on the next agenda.
And then Janet can do the research and that needs to be behind the idea.
Yeah, unless he's already got research and then
I don't, here's the idea, it's briefly, you can add it to the agenda if we want next time. You remember when we did the courthouse mural, one of the artists wanted to put markers in the sidewalks downtown. I thought that was an amazingly beautiful and clever idea. I'd like to talk about that next month.
Okay.
Similar to, have you seen the medallions?
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Or the airport.
At the airport. I haven't seen them, I've seen pictures of them. I haven't flown anywhere since the pandemic.
All right, I got it. Although they're not pouring concrete, it's harder to do already. Yeah, no, but it's.
Jackhammer.
Jackhammer, redo it, but yes.
Constructive create.
Tina will do that. Okay, we're on to the next item, which is consistent branding through art criteria in planning documents. That's the summary Jan has given us.
Yes, okay, so I'm sorry, this is a very wordy presentation, but it couldn't help but be. I could have, hopefully you read it before you came here, but so this actually was a requested agenda item from Commissioner Burrell at his very first meeting in June. And it also helps us segue because, again, we're going into our budget retreat in October. And in October, we do kind of use criteria in order to judge projects. And so this is the request, whether to consider creating new or additional guidelines for public art and planning documents. And the new guidelines goal would be to brand art in a consistent manner. And the vision would be to enhance quality of life for residents and perhaps help vitalize the economy. And first of all, I just want to ask Commissioner Farrell, does this capture what you asked?
More or less, yeah.
Okay, all right. And so what I want to present, because this is really, a big discussion, is just where we have been in our guidelines, and what the documents that we have that we used last year in deciding projects and their scope and criterias. So obviously the formal art guidelines that we have come from 2013. We have, it has a mission statement, it has a vision. This is not actually officially adopted by council, but it was adopted by BPAC. Some programs do have their guidelines adopted by council, and that may be something we want to consider in the future. And so there's lots of goals. I tried to just draw out the ones that I thought might be relevant to some of the things that we've been discussing lately and to this topic in particular. There is actually a goal for more contemporary art, but still contextual in that document with an emphasis on place, but the use of native materials and simple construction. The focus being on integrating with the natural setting and built environment. There is a very specific statement about aesthetics, acknowledging the very unquantifiable, almost subjective criteria that beauty is, but that things like function, space, form, scale, texture, and continuity are things to consider, and just to bring the community aesthetic judgment to the endeavors, and that's through BPAC approving projects, and then that's through our selection panel, and then our focus group. And again, that's strong consideration on context for the surroundings is very strong in the 2013 document. So when I started in 2020, the program had one kind of direction, and I was brought on, I believe, to start doing more bigger public art places as part of major infrastructure projects. And with my 20 years experience, I brought with me a bit of a philosophy that is not unknown in the public art field, professional field, but that it is a strong process that actually enhances site specificity, integration, and quality. If you do really good process, your outcomes are going to do good. And how to enhance that site specificity through the process itself. So we focused on expanding the community stakeholders in project scoping. The courthouse actually was the first opportunity that we had to try it, and I have 3 people who were members of that first selection panel. And so
You trained us well, Jen.
yeah, I know. Theatricos, was the property across the street, so it was an important community stakeholder to have at the table. We had a pastor from a church to a block away. It was an important community stakeholder. We, had people who go to court, some, as attorneys and judges. So we had those representatives. Some people go as defendants, and they might come from specific communities. So we tried to have that representation. We tried to have just general diversity. So our Indigenous coordinator was actually Rose Tohi, started the very same day I did. And so I invited her naturally to join this first selection panel. And then if you remember, we had Professor Guthrie. So we had, I think, quite a broad range of community stakeholders. And we know that we went actually through 2 rounds of proposals in that, because the first round didn't quite fit what everybody needed from the project. And so that's why I'm saying that kind of stakeholder presence in a selection panel, even beyond BPAC's approval, really helps to make it be very specific to that location. We focus more on outreach and our calls to artists. Really improve that. Also look strong at the criteria of which you voted in the selection process. And then also this just concept of getting the artist, that emphasis on things being integrated and contextual happens so much better if the artist is at the table on design teams. And so we put a real focus on that since 2020. We're still working our way through some of the bumps of all that in a lot of our projects, but we began it just 2 years ago. And then last year, and again, in order to make the guidelines come more alive, we had 3 BPAC members, 2 of whom are at the table tonight, kind of come up with their own kind of voting criteria for selecting projects so that they would enhance placemaking, to ask these questions of every single project that we approve. Recognizing that no one project can fulfill them all, but at least start asking these types of questions and kind of put it through. And is it hitting enough notches? So you guys had a lot, and you guys adopted that and used that at last year's retreat. So it is pretty new. And what I did note in this, in your aesthetic continuum section, one of the things that you promoted is a diversity of aesthetic styles. And that might be in conflict, or intention, not conflict, but intention with an idea of branding consistently, because you might not get a diversity of aesthetic styles if you brand consistently. And again, you can reconsider this, but I was just, again, pointing out that these are the things that you guys took up last year and approved. And so these was for equity, diversity, and inclusiveness. And then the partnerships and cooperative relationships. So, it's just this is a discussion again. Do we want to pursue any new additional guidelines at this time? And if so, do we want to pursue consistent branding in public art?
Can I just add one thing?
You can add.
Well, I just wanted to give a little, just one quick note about the guidelines that we developed.
Mm-hmm.
Those came out of, it was kind of a consolidation of the discussions we'd had over the last couple of years, the way that we've been working. And so we thought it was time to put them down in writing so that we actually had them in front of us when we came to the budget review. So they weren't drawn up, as an abstract kind of thing. They really came out of our conversations as a commission.
Thank you, Sam. Vice Chair Lebarski.
Well, Commissioner Barrow, do you want to speak a little bit about what prompted this discussion?
First of all, I think all of those requirements are great. So I applaud Jen and all the commission for all of those. I agree with all of them. I think the art in town is beautiful. Sometimes it looks so different that I think I'm in a different town. And part of me embraces that, and part of me thinks there needs to be a through line that makes the east side and the west side and downtown all feel like one city, right? Not only does it make Flagstaff feel like one community, but there are economic marketing, tourism advantages to having an identity. I don't know that I go so far as to call it branding. I think that tends to scare people off because I want to preserve the quirkiness and the individuality of what we want to accomplish. But it'd be nice, I would think, if there was a through line between some of the art, right? We've all probably traveled in places around the country and around the world where the art does do that. And we've been to cities where it doesn't. And
Actually,
think
can
finding the balance.
Can you give me an example? Like, I'm trying to
Sure.
think, what does that mean? Yeah.
I spent my childhood in a town called Idlewild, California. Their art was wood carvings, and it was everywhere. Maybe some of us have been to Solvang in California, and they take on this whole Scandinavian feel. I'm not at all suggesting we go that far, okay? But the city had sort of a feel to it. And I want to find the balance between the quirky beautifulness and something that unifies us.
I did put these questions up. What's the policy for supporting this direction? Is it for marketing Flagstaff, or is it for another purpose, or what is the policy support? And then, where can we look, other cities, and you've now mentioned a couple, because I think you'd want to see the art in those cities to see if that's something you want. I was thinking immediately of Santa Fe, and actually I was just there. Now, they do that in their architecture, and to an extreme degree. They took historic brick buildings and covered them with a kind of a fake adobe in order to, make everything look consistent. But they don't do it in their art. It's interesting, their public art then kind of stands out as the unique little gem against the kind of more generic or, architecture. They kind of did it through architecture. I haven't found or know of in a major city, a public art program that's adopted this. So any ideas or suggestions of where to look so the conversation could be expanded, and I can show you maybe examples of where people do think it's working, I would be happy to do that, but I don't know them myself.
Yeah, sorry.
In Idaho City, Idaho, they I don't know, it's the only one I could think of. I've been to so many cities.
Iowa City.
Yeah, I've been to so many cities. Idaho, I think it's Idaho Falls. Forgive me, Idaho Falls, Idaho. Yeah, I've been to so many cities, spent so much time looking around them for like 10 years, and I really don't know if I've seen thematically that. But my first idea went straight to Jana's in the architecture, and it's, most people, the visitors are like, oh, cool, but like everybody else is like, what the hell do these people do to this town? Because it's too symmetrical, not symmetrical, but it's too much the same. But Idaho Falls is the only place that I've seen like throughout they just make these benches, and they're like artistic benches, and they're everywhere scattered around the city. And I guess that's the only one I could think of. It's a tie-in, because everybody else just has art pieces, which you can't really tell an artist. I don't know. But that's the only one I can think of for context.
Okay, so like a bench program.
Yeah, like a bench program.
And it's an interesting thing to mention, that maybe you could have a program. That's kind of, again, like your streetlights look the same in their, neighborhood. Those are, those are kind of elements, and not guidelines for public art specifically, but they are almost architectural elements that then tie a place together, versus saying, we want that as a guideline for public art, but
I certainly seen that. Sorry. Well, I actually think, it's interesting to think about Flagstaff, because I think it has happened organically, that there is a kind of a sensibility. If you think about especially recently, the airport, the whole, it's got the history and the time of the natural world and the dark skies, and then we've got the new transportation center and the light thing it's got the mountain lion and the trees, and so there is, I think, in these large places, there is a thematic connection, which then gets punctuated by difference. But I think it's really interesting. Organically, it's been kind of an organic evolution of people saying we want it to be place specific, and here's where we live, without us having to set firm guidelines. I think that's kind of very cool that we've succeeded in doing that. I think in these big projects, but I do think it's fun to consider these threads of connection, like, well, we've got the Panthers? Mountain lions, right, that appear all over town, or the benches. You can, I think that is a nice kind of thread to have, but I don't think we need to make specific.
And when I think about that, that's a very good point, Sandra. When I think about that, I wonder if making something more programmatic or adding a budget line that kind of specifies your idea to, you know, I don't know what it would be, but like, you know, if it was the mountain lion or the benches or whatever you can think of that would place a certain specific type of art out there, which could, you know, through osmosis or just being around it, kind of bleed out into the rest of the community. I think that's actually viable. That's something we could do. I'd be really interested to see how long staff would have to figure out that one sentence that spelled it out. And the effectiveness of it is another concern that I have of it, is how effective is that line going to be overlooked at, you know, over time. But through a program or through a line item on the budget, I think that it would be more effective. But if we just wanted to keep it in the document so future commissions can, you know, ponder it and
like consider projects that could provide a connecting thread.
yeah.
I came up with the sentence.
You know, some of what you were saying kind of triggered my brain a little bit, and some of it being, well, for instance, like, you know, you see these sort of themes in various places when it comes to, like, Saratoga Springs has horses because they have the whole track, and each of the horses, it's similar to our mountain lions, not mountain lions. It's funny how the language gets in your brain, right?
Panthers.
Panthers,
Sorry
right?
about that. Yeah.
But it was kind of cool to hear you mention that theme because you're right, the DCC currently has art that could have that. One of the utility boxes has mountain lions. There's the mountain lions spread throughout the community. I believe I don't know if there's a mountain lion on the airport, but so you have this area where kind of almost like a motif. I wouldn't call it a through line, right? But a motif of this natural world kind of popping up. And then architecture is something that we have a lot of, the gateway signs, which were through the BPAC, those big metal, and then some of the monuments that are being put up that show various things is all architecture.
66, yeah, there is a very consistent, those entryway signs and the Route 66 all use that architecture.
And so it's interesting because we do have certain, I wouldn't call them attempts because it wasn't like trying to tie it all together, but it is interesting that you see a little bit of that. And so hearing some of that, would it be, I'm just still trying to wrap my head around the idea. Don't mind. I'm not even a commissioner, so you guys are okay with me just trying to wrap my head around it. But knowing that there are some of these motifs that are popping up, is it something that's even more defined than that, where it becomes kind of like an architectural element? So, you know, you have to have your art has to include a mountain lion, or, I mean, I guess I'm just trying to like understand how that restriction would work, because I could see, like you were saying, having a line item that drives it. I just thought it was really interesting because we do see some of those motifs popping up. You're right, and the natural
because of the consciousness of being place-based. And
right.
That, I mean, I wonder if that seems to me to be a sufficient kind of guideline. And it would really make it clear what we mean by place-based.
Right, because it's coming out now that we're adding, people from the south side, or, giving them more voice on some of the projects. Like, the Black Lumberjacks are coming up in multiple projects. But they are visually depicted differently. Yeah. So there isn't a consistency of visuals. So that, but there is there's themes. That is out at the airport. It's probably going to be part of Lone Tree. It's gonna be part of the DCC. It's
Got a
you know,
utility box.
It's on a utility box. So within that area, that community keeps coming up as very important. And maybe after they see it, because we haven't actually built all these things, they're all in design, you know, maybe, you know, they'll say, no, now we have enough. Right now, they don't have enough. They have one utility box, but it's, you know, that they can visually see and encounter and interact with every day. So that might change over time. But I think, Chris, if I'm not wrong, you're more wanting because you brought up the traffic utility boxes at the June meeting. You said each one is beautiful, but they don't look like each other. Well, you know, the idea was to give each location what they wanted versus making them, you know, all in the same color scheme or all in the same theme. And
Hey,
there's
Jana?
you know, that way the you know, Sunnyside could have some colors that related to Sunnyside and, you know, the park could kind of, you know, or, you know, right by the Mountain Lion, all those stuff we had at Mountain Lion, you know, up by Marketplace Mallway. So they were specific to their location and they didn't have a color scheme or a theme that was, you know, architecture. They didn't have that, but they were individual in their style. But and
Hey,
that
Jana?
yes.
Hey, Jonathan Stone has his hand up. I think he'd like to say something.
Okay.
I apologize. I don't remember how it works in commissions on agenda items. If the public's welcome to speak. I appreciate the comments from the other commission members with respect to this. I guess I just had a question, and I noticed some of it was around architectural discussion. Is there incentive or any kind of program to support the restoration or creation of new Route 66 style neon signs? And I know other cities have programs like that, and it potentially comes through a similar body as this. Because I would suggest that in addition to this conversation, that there's potentially opportunity to continue to preserve and restore some of those important architectural assets.
I don't know who knows the most, because Eliza knew the most, but we do have a Route 66 sign. And I know they were talking about neon on the one near Marketplace.
I can go for it and then add in. So, actually, some of it funded through the BPAC previously and still coming through beautification funds. There is a historic preservation grant that goes to help people do their homes if they're in historic preservation to help preserve those. And then there's historic signs and facades, which was used to help preserve some of the signs and also to help tear down some billboards over the years when it was determined that we didn't want billboards in our community anymore. So I don't know if we have one I don't remember the details because the Historic Preservation Office generally handles those, so we'd want to go confirm some of those pieces and come back. Because I don't recall that there is a way to use those funds to create neon. It was more about preserving signs that related to historic preservation than about creating a new sign that was in that style. But I might not be remembering that detail perfectly. So with your permission, I'll go get that. We'll go get that information.
Right.
But I know we had one that was designed specifically to preserve. I mean, you guys know what I'm talking about, the Dubois Hospital, those various signs. There was a funding source that was used to help preserve those that came through beautification funding.
Right. I know that the Route 66 landmark near the mall, they were actually talking about doing a variation of that one
Yeah,
with neon, and I don't know what the status of that one was. It was and that was something we were gonna create.
right, and that is supposed to have it's one of the architecture monuments that's coming along, and it was the one right next to the mall. And yeah, there was, at one point, the desire to put neon on it. It's actually been removed, through the design process. In part because the mall wanted it to say stuff like, get your shopping fix on Route 66, and there just became this tension between sort of what was an appropriate artistic monumenting feature and what became advertising. I don't know if you're all aware, our sign code is extremely strict for obviously good reasons, as mentioned. Some would probably argue the points, fine points of it, but and so anytime that we move into something that could be considered a sign, it becomes more difficult. So I don't think it was the neon that got taken out because it was neon, as much as because the content of the neon didn't feel like a line that we were ready to approach.
Let me turn to the other commissioners here and see if you have any response, any concerns about the current guidelines, any desire to tweak them in the way that, Chris, it seems like you're asking us, well, let me just, anything you want to add to the conversation?
I guess my feeling on it is, I think back to some of the discussions we were having when we did the yellow box activity, and we talked about how different parts of Flagstaff have kind of created their own, like, these like sub-communities that identify, like, you talk about, we had this whole discussion about like, what is South Side, or South downtown versus North downtown, and where do you go, and these little pockets creating their own identities. And to me, that's part of the charm of Flagstaff. And so my gut instinct is hesitant to start trying to come up with this thread. I can see it potentially as like you were saying, programmatic, like I think of these places that have, when you brought up the benches, I can think of places that have had these displays of like, they're like cows that are all different mosaics and things that could represent those different parts of Flagstaff. Or I was in Minneapolis and they had hens everywhere for some reason that were of all different sizes and designs, and I could see that being tailored to maybe, I could see a program piece of something of that sort, but I'm hesitant to put something in our overall guidelines that creates this common thread. But maybe there are ideas and ways that we can do it that, like, when I hear of like doing something that's all wood, like all the art within the town is all wood, that makes me hesitant to do it.
It didn't suggest that.
Right, I know, and I know that was extreme and that was suggested, but that's what I have in my mind of like, even just, I like that the boxes are all different, because I think they represent that sub-community that's been created in that area. So, I don't know if that's all I don't have any questions, it's just where my mind is right now.
Let you go first because I agree with everything you said. I was in Idaho Falls in 2015. The only thing I remember about Idaho Falls are those benches. And benches, right? And but the theme, the connection was that they were all benches, but then they were wildly different in what they looked like.
That's true.
And so that was the thing that brought the community together, was the bench theme, but then it was sort of, have at it. You can do it. The one I remember was like a giant corn cob or something like that, where they cut it out and like those bites is where you sat or something like that. So they're very three-dimensional and fun. I think you said it a while back when we first started talking about this, a lot of this I think happens organically with the guidelines that we're already using in terms of a sense of place. And I think on bigger projects, that's probably particularly true. Then on smaller projects, I think I agree with exactly what you said, where we have the flexibility for kind of more localized community reflection on so something that goes on or that folks in Southside want probably would be very different than something that we would propose or suggest in the middle of downtown. So I think that I think that what we have now, at least for my purposes, I think works well. Those guidelines that folks spent a lot of time on last year to kind of overarching direction, but then maintain the flexibility on a project by project basis to mix it up and really get hyper local.
I think when you talk about a sense of place, it sounds like the guidelines have done a real good job of finding into a neighborhood or a block or an intersection but I don't think that they speak to that thread. I mean, you said Idaho Falls is benches everywhere and then they're wildly different. That sounds cool to me, right? So there's one little thread and then you explode the individual neighborhood or whatever.
But isn't that programmatic versus like guidelines for all of the art that we have within Flagstaff? Wouldn't you say? I mean,
maybe.
like I'm imagining in Idaho Falls, never been there, I'm sure it's a lovely city. Sounds very exciting.
Lots of places to sit.
Yes. I would hope or imagine that they have other art besides benches. So like the bench project is a thing. It's like a program that has been put in place with all of this really creative output, but it's not a guideline for all of the art. It's that one program piece, which I think could be very cool to implement.
Right, and because that's interesting to me, because in some ways, the traffic signal cabinets we're doing their traffic signal cabinets, right? We're not doing every single one, but we've started it, and and beautification and action grants started to pick it up, which was our intent. And so people are coming with their own ideas from the businesses, and they're doing different kinds of utility boxes, because they can and we can. And so it is a thread to have utility boxes around the city done, but then they are very individual. So since you cited that as something that was not what you wanted, but something more, a more common, I'm still trying to find that example.
Maybe it's the mountain lion on every utility box. I'm not suggesting that, but that's an example, right? Right? Have the artists do whatever they want, but work in a mountain lion. There are a million examples like that, but maybe that's just the one.
Or like a lumberjack or something that somebody decides is going to represent Flagstaff.
Right.
Today.
Yeah, but is that public art direction, or is that a Discover Flagstaff direction?
And I really want to echo what Tina said. I think there is a difference between this kind of overarching aesthetic of who we are, where we live, what this place is, that I think has evolved organically and with an awareness of this is Flagstaff, this is what drew people to Flagstaff, this is what we appreciate about being here. So there's that overarching aesthetic that's, I think, already in place. And but then I think that we can consider these kind of programmatic projects that
Get the ball rolling.
Yeah, so like consider projects that provide a thread. Maybe that, that's the best I can come up with tonight, because I truly am trying to find a successful example somewhere in the public art field, so that's, any ideas anybody wants to throw me. But it sounds like there was at least some consensus around that idea that if there was an opportunity for a project to provide a thread, that you guys would be open to that.
maybe, you mentioned earlier this medallions in the ground. I can imagine in all the different neighborhoods that there's a medallion project.
Yeah,
That
could be cool.
Yeah, right, and if there you could say, and they all have to be bronze, so you could get a consistent look. And maybe not in the design on it, but maybe, we want to pick up so there could be an opportunity for consistent thread. I would just say that, cities that are really known for their art are just known for art.
Yeah. When you bring that up,
They're not consistent. Other than, even an ancient city like Rome is just, you can turn a corner, or Paris, and you can have you can have a pyramid at the Louvre. These cities are known for their art, and they attract tourists because their art is great. So there's a different way to market a city based on its art other than a consistency. And so, but it's a choice. It's a choice. Like I said, Santa Fe is a very, I mean, that, you know, kind of architecture that has to look a certain way, down to the McDonald's, is certainly a distinction of Santa Fe, and it certainly gets lots of visitors. So, it, you know, but it is not always beloved by locals, and there's a tension there. There's
Quite
a real
opaque.
tension. Right, and so what I've noticed is they start putting actually art pieces that are kind of flamboyant in order to do the contrast
yeah.
with the kind of brown adobe. So.
The whole rail yard too, I think, is
Yeah.
a nice contrast to
That's
that,
true.
but somehow they've
They're very
added that
snuck in there.
conversation in. So
Right, which is, it's very contemporary.
it is, right, and it's good, it's a nice contrast.
And another city I was thinking of when you were mentioning all of those things, Janet, was Louisville, Kentucky, and these horse things everywhere. And in some places, it really blocks out the beauty of the art that's there because it's too traditional, horse there, horse there, horse there. And it's obscured the city when there's actual art happening behind that horse. It's like a very strange tension and some art within itself, I guess.
Well, I think this is a very healthy conversation, thank you.
Thank you for
initiating
humoring
it.
me, I appreciate it.
No, yeah, I really appreciate it as well. I think it's good to have these discussions so we can really have a foundation of where we want to move forward from.
No, me too, because I mean, you are going to be, evaluating projects again in another month, and just thinking what's important to you, the conversation actually, brings it up. So that's actually why I thought it was a really good conversation to have.
And lastly, I just wanted to mention to the commissioners that weren't here throughout the process of formulating some new guidelines and things. It was quite a process. So in order to get this done, I was just thinking, man, that there's a whole other year in one sentence, which we shouldn't detract us, but yeah, it's quite a process to get everybody to agree on something.
Well, I just say, again, I think it's really healthy to have these conversations. I do think, we're in this interesting role that we've been given, that how do you balance identity with restricted identity or identity with inclusion? How do you balance bringing tourists with people who live here? So we do have to walk all of this kind of netting, and it's really important for us to have the conversation. So thanks. I'm sure we'll have them over the budget too.
Yeah, I just want to echo that too. It's been a year since we joined, I think, right? We joined at the same time, and I've never brought anything to the commission, so kudos to you for doing that. 'Cause it helps. Maybe I'm not so good at generating the ideas, but it does help me in figuring out where I stand on certain things as well, and my feeling. And so it is good conversation. So I appreciate you bringing that, and so just keep bringing the ideas, because I think it's valuable for us to have these discussions.
Good, thank you. So we're ready to move to from items.
Yeah, and I have none. I would have written them up if I had them. So, do you?
Well,
Vice Chair, have any from?
I'm not sure if this is to from, or can I just remind everyone to get ideas to Jana if you'd like them to be considered for the budget conversation. And in those ideas, to remember that it's both public art ideas, maybe one of these projects or thematic things, and also beautification. And we have, big things happening to the landscape here, including some negative things around the flooding. So I just want to remind you to be thinking, all of us to be thinking in terms of beautification and public art. And to be thinking also about what you think the public needs are at this point in our history, at this place. We are facing climate change. There are, a lot of I think there's a certain amount of distress that people have and how important beauty is as an antidote to that. And so I urge us all to come forward with ideas and also just to remind ourselves of the context we're working in. That's all.
Yeah. So, any to and from items, Vice Mayor Sweet? You're next on the.
You know, tonight I really don't have anything. Thank you for the good discussion.
Any to from items from the commission?
I'd follow up on our discussion, if there's a consensus that we might want to search for a project that has a threat, that we start that search.
And I think this, the start, all right, I guess we can't discuss it, never mind.
Yeah, we can't discuss. Okay.
I'll clear my throat with budget.
Craig, did you capture that?
Good, I did.
Can you spell that for me, please?
Yes.
GGHGG.
So we can't discuss a to from item.
No,
It was noted. Okay.
There's some, I don't know if this is the correct time for this stuff, but MoCAF is having the Flagstaff Foundry on August 27th at 7:30 p.m. These are the rooms you want to be in to have conversations with like-minded individuals who can see the future of art and transforming art in Flagstaff. And it's conveniently placed right before the budget time. So if you don't know anybody there, it's a nice way to get to know people by saying, hey, I'm a commissioner for the city, or whatever you want to say. I mean, you can say whatever you want, but it's a cool show on top of that. It's like Saturday Night Live for Flagstaff. But those, I mean, places like that, at the museum, I mean, that's where we ruminate community conversations with people who are not afraid to tell us what they feel and who also can relate to our mission.
Foundry does good stuff.
Any requests for future agenda items?
I already said those things.
Is that a formal request?
Yeah, oh, sure.
Then we need, then how does this work?
So the just so I heard, the request was for, to keep searching for an example.
Well, yeah, to come up with, if it's not going to be part of all the art, then is there a project that has a thread that's citywide? And then the sidewalk medallion idea. I'll bring my jacket.
Can I tweak that a little bit?
Of course, please, please help me.
I don't know if it's helping at all, but do a discussion about whether we would like to put this forward as a call to the public for ideas for a thematic project. So rather than us thinking it up, that we bring the public in to have a conversation.
I think that'd be really, really well received. And I think, like, for instance, Creative Flagstaff and folks like that would want to be a part of that conversation with you if they could. So, in fact, he emailed us that he would.
Oh.
That already popped up here. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of wisdom there. Find a way to make that a more inclusive discussion.
Right. So, yes.
Well done.
So is there a project with a connecting thread as a future discussion item? And maybe we can bring in some partners to help.
What might be the process?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
and
exactly
what
what
might
might
be
be
the
the process
process
for establishing that.
Yeah, what might be the process so that the community can be part of the conversation?
Fully engaged, inclusive.
Sounds like we're making a
All
master
good
plan
words.
all of a sudden, but I'm just saying, that this is staff intensive.
I was gonna say, I was
I,
surprised that
this
you
is very
didn't just.
intensive. We may not get to it in the next couple of months.
That's fine.
So that,
That's fine.
what is, until we're.
Welcome to your first day, Jana.
took Eliza about a year before she was like, well, no, I don't think that's gonna work.
I know, yeah, what might be the process so that the community is part of the conversation? That's how I'm hearing it, and I just want to, okay.
And do we need formally
No,
two commissioners
you need two more commissioners to add that to a future meeting, not next meeting.
Do we have two commissioners then?
Would
Who
you
would
like
like
to
to
make a
see that?
motion, or what are we supposed to say?
No, we just
Just-
nod our head
yeah.
or like
Just-
do this.
I feel like everybody else is like, heck no, and one person is like, we're gonna put this on. the
Right,
agenda
we had that happen.
I'm all for it.
So, okay, you're all for it, okay.
Good. Anything else? Any other agenda items at this point? Just make Jana's day. I would like to see you consider. Great, are we ready to go to just a reminder about the next meeting? Monday, September 12th, 4 o'clock. Hybrid or in person.
No, it's.
I mean, both.
Yes, it's
Yeah,
both.
sorry. It's hybrid.
Right. It is hybrid.
It's in here or
So
be
it's
online.
in person here or on Microsoft Teams, just like today. But I have to say, it was really wonderful to have most everybody in the room. It was all the commissioners were here, so this has been really great. So.
Great, then we are adjourned. Thank you very much. And thank you, Janet.
Where's your gavel?
Gotta
I was expecting.
talk to Paul Deasy about that.
I still have